The year was 1956. Elvis was the biggest musical act. Marilyn Monroe is America's sweetheart. Videotapes were just invented. The year saw the births of Bryan Cranston, Tom Hanks, and Larry Bird. All in all, it sounds like a pretty good year. But if you were a comic book fan, you probably would have been sadder than the Newman Nights after The Boys season finale.
No. You had to kill my wife like that, butcher!
You see, after World War II, comic books about superheroes fighting back against evil just didn't hit the same. The drill audience of kids couldn't relate their real life to the comic characters anymore. There was no more boogeyman hiding overseas for them to fight one day. And because of this, the comic stands started to get filled with a lot more mystery, horror, and romance comics. These comics were a lot more mature and gory, something that most adult readers would enjoy. But as always, there was a guy who had a problem with these comics. That guy was Frederick Wortham, a psychiatrist who wrote a book citing his grievances with these comics and how they influenced the youth. Key issues that most people took away from these books was Wonder Woman's individuality and independent nature, which in his point of view was promoting lesbianism, which was a negative thing for him.
Girl, shut up.
He also added that the same books promoted bondage, which I can't say he's wrong. The creator of Wonder Woman was kind of ahead of his time in the way he lived his life, but you can look up all those details yourself if you're interested. He also added his thoughts on Batman and Robin, suggesting that their relationship had gay undertones, which from some panels you can get that idea, but I think he was again worried about the wrong thing here. Instead of being concerned about the homosexual undertones, maybe he should have been worried about the predator undertones.
Freaky ass nigga, he a 69 god.
But with all that being said, the book mostly targeted the horror and graphic violence at the time, but this influenced the creation of the Comics Code Authority, a government-regulated seal of approval that all comics had to abide by to be released to the public. The code included many aggressive rules that limited many companies that thrived off things now banned. This caused a mass change in the industry overnight. Horror comics, gone. Mystery comics, gone. Romance comics, gone. In 1956, all that remained were dull and pale imitations of former Golden Age heroes. But that all changed in October when DC released Showcase number 4, which featured the first appearance of Barry Allen, a reimagining of the Golden Age superhero Flash. This character redefined the meaning of a superhero. First with his costume, making it more red and sleek to stand out on the page on the comic stand. This character, although fast, was not just a superhero. He was a scientist who had to use his brains more often than not to defeat his villains. This iteration of the Flash capitalized on the space race. Kids and young adults were fascinated with the world's race to the moon, and with that fascination came curiosity about science. And after they're done learning about photosynthesis and mitosis at school, they can go down to a local comic shop and buy a comic that explores theoretical and speculative science. Or probably just a grocery store, they didn't really have comic shops back then. The science they explored was vast, from the phasing, mirages, vortexes, running on water, his literal aura. No, he literally had an aura that protected him and anyone he touched from his speed velocity. This was obviously before the discovery of the Speed Force, but it's all science at the end of the day, and that's what made Barry Allen a hit. Plus, the parents supported their children's interest in science. And with the Flash's success, DC had the confidence to revive another Golden Age hero in the form of Hal Jordan, the new Green Lantern. With the rebirth of this character came a new element to his mythos, being the sci-fi element. Again, DC is playing up the space race to kids. This new version of Green Lantern was a test pilot that always wanted to see the stars, just like most kids of the time. And with his stories, they got to see the extraterrestrial side of science. Hal would fight aliens on the regular mixed with classic corrupt business folk, and yes, of course, he would eventually venture to the stars and fight alongside the Green Lantern Corps. With this good footing, DC finally felt it was time to retool their superhero team. But this time it wouldn't be like the classic Justice Society where they sat around telling war stories. Instead, this was an actual combat team that went to battle together. Paying homage to the former society, they decided to name the team the Justice League of America. Founding members included Barry Allen, Hal Jordan, and Martian Manhunter of the new Silver Age of comics. But the team also included new iterations of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman. You see, these characters, although similar to their Golden Age counterparts who were members of the Justice Society, are totally different beings. We can bring this back yet again to Barry Allen, where in the famous story Flash of Two Worlds, we discovered that all the Golden Age stories took place on Earth 2, while the current stories we read in the Silver Age take place on Earth 1. This was huge at the time because no one knew what the idea of a multiverse was. String theory wasn't even thought of yet. The writers of this comic just ran wild with their scientific imaginations and created something that is now common state in superhero media. All superhero media is affected by this one man in the red tights and yellow lightning bolt. But over at Marvel, after seeing all this success DC was having with the Justice League, Martin Goodman, the then publisher of Marvel, tasked a disgruntled writer on the verge of leaving the whole comic industry to create Marvel's own Justice League. Stan Lee was just about tired of his constant failures in the comic industry and decided that this would be his last story, and therefore he was going to make it his way. The Fantastic Four was Marvel's first family. These characters, although a team like the Justice League, was very complex. These characters were again playing with scientific elements with how they received their powers, and with their leader being the smartest man alive, Reed Richards, they explored a lot more scientific theories in their first stories. The family dynamic was relatable to readers of the generation and became an absolute hit. This rejuvenated Stan to create more characters to relate to readers. The next team he made to compete with the Justice League was a class of teenage mutants led by a British telepath who sought to teach a group of the newest race on Earth how to control their gifts and help people. The name of this team was the Mutants. But of course, Martin Goodman said scratch that, we need something bold, catchy, something marketable. So Stan came up with the idea that they have an extra gene that gave them their mutant powers, the X gene. So from here on, Marvel's new teenage superhero team was now known as the X-Men. This team of course became a mainstay in the Marvel universe, and later on in the 70s started to address social issues like prejudice and discrimination. The mutants were seen as abominations and a threat to the human race, even though people like Charles and the X-Men did their best to help humanity and show they could live together in harmony. To finish off the trifecta of superhero squads, Stan decided to bring together his recently created characters Hulk, Ant-Man, the Wasp, Iron Man, and Thor to create Earth's mightiest heroes, aka the Avengers. All these characters individually were a part of Marvel's Silver Age, incorporating the same themes of science fiction, magic, and relatability we have been seeing thus far in the Silver Age. With them together, Stan thought he could bring together all their fan bases into one and have them fight a threat too big for just one of them. So basically just a classic superhero team up stuff. But even with mentioning all of this, I still have yet to cite Stan Lee's biggest creation for Marvel, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Now Superboy and Robin of course predate Spidey, but he was the first major teen superhero that was his own hero. He's not an aged down hero or a sidekick. He's just a high schooler who got bit by a radioactive spider which gave him superpowers, and he learned that with great power comes great responsibility. He went on to become Marvel's highest selling character of the era, and honestly his comics are still a great read, and this is coming from a person who is practically allergic to comics written before 1985. With all these characters and teams that I've mentioned, and even the ones I haven't, it would be weird just to claim this as Marvel's Silver Age. This is Marvel's renaissance. They were practically dead and Stan was about to jump ship, but now practically all these characters are mainstays in their universe in comics, TV, movies, and video games. But that's enough from Marvel. I want to spin back on DC because there's still some more stuff to talk about from them. The X-Men might be the first team made up of teenagers, but DC brought together their most famous sidekicks at the time to form a team of their own, free of any adult supervision, unlike the X-Men. The first Titan stories followed typical Silver Age camp, but later on the stories explored the racial tension going on in inner cities and protests of the Vietnam War. Ultimately, it wasn't until the 80s that the Titans started to gain popularity with readers with real engaging stories. But that still doesn't take away from the fact that they originated here with Robin, Aqualad, Kid Flash, and Wonder Girl.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
But the teens weren't the only characters addressing social issues of the time. DC started to see a fall in sales for their new Green Lantern, so they thought to boost sales, they should give him a partner, Green Arrow. Again, this is a brand new version of a once golden age hero, only this time he keeps the same identity of Oliver Queen. This is where DC drew a line in the sand because they finally ditched the approval of the Comics Code Authority to tell a more grounded and thought-provoking story. Arrow and Lantern were partners, but they also held very different viewpoints as men. Lantern was the by-the-book, law and order guy, and Arrow was the liberal and social conscious type of guy. I kind of think they flipped the conservative viewpoint typically held by rich people like Oliver Queen, and the liberal viewpoint typically held by middle-class people like Hal Jordan. But you can tell me what you think in the comments below. I'm not totally sure on that. Their books addressed many heavy topics at the time like political corruption, drug use, and racism. This book was really the start of the end of the Silver Age. And with that, I still have yet to mention the events they had yearly around summertime when kids were on vacation. Remember how I said the Silver Age followed the heroes on Earth 1 and the Golden Age heroes were on Earth 2? Well, they would have crossover events every summer between the universes when the dimensional barrier was the closest. That was an in-universe explanation, but it was really because kids are out in summertime and they'll know they'll be there to buy books, and a crossover event is woohoo fun, let's do it. The most famous crossover was Crisis on Earth 3, where the JLA and JSA fought against the crime syndicate, an evil twisted version of the JLA. These types of events, the crossovers between universes and teams, are the prime inspirations for events in comics and movies we see today. But you know it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows from this era. They were under heavy censorship and guidelines, so some characters took a turn for the worse in this era. Like for example, the Silver silver-aged Superman comics aren't looked back upon fondly because of the wackiness and convenience of his powers. But oddly enough, it had the opposite effect on Batman. People have fond memories of Adam West Batman that showered in camp, and the Brave and the Bold Batman series is literally silver-aged incarnate. But mostly the women of this era suffered. Characters like Wonder Woman and Lois Lane were stripped of their independence and motives. Most of the time, Lois' stories centered around trying to get Superman to marry her. Wonder Woman's stories will focus on romance and fashion, and they even depowered Diana at a point in this era. All this to conform to overbearing regulations and standards. Some people would say this era alone is what brings down Wonder Woman's character from being as iconic as the rest of the Trinity. From their love interest, side characters, and villains, Wonder Woman's stories and canon were always being written differently, trying to somewhat redefine her character so the writers can make the definitive version of Wonder Woman. Instead of building off what the last writer brought to the table with characters and stories like the rest of the Justice League mates. This differed from Batman and Superman stories where their side characters got to develop into bigger parts of the universe and their villains were mainstays in the DC universe, and their love interests became things of legend. With Batman, he usually had a different love interest every decade or so, and with Superman, he always had Lois Lane. But sometimes with Wonder Woman, it's a little wishy-washy. Sometimes it's Steve Trevor, sometimes it's Prince Pharaoh, sometimes it's Merboy, and usually it has to do with her mission at the time. Although this era was not the best for legacy female characters, it did introduce some pretty important women of DC. Firstly, Supergirl, who debuted in 1959, set the tone for the new female hero. She had depth to Superman's mythos, being the last daughter of Krypton, akin to her cousin Clark. We just got to see the mentoring side of Superman, where he just wanted Kara to have a good life on Earth, and shows her the importance of her independence and her identity, and of course how to control her powers. Supergirl went on to become more than just the cousin of Superman. She became her own hero. She even somewhat inspired the creation of the new Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, in 1964. Barbara, along with being her own hero, started to expand the Bat family even more from just Robin and Batman. The newest Justice League member, Zatanna, is the last major female hero to be introduced in this era. She's the daughter of the Golden Age hero Zatara, the only few times you'll see a Golden Age character being used on Earth 1. Her character reintroduced readers to magic and mythical elements of the DC universe. What I think we can learn most from this era is that sometimes restrictions make for creative outcomes. This era has ups and downs, but we still see its influence in superhero media today, from science fiction to the emphasis on team-ups, the appreciation of legacy, diverse storytelling, and the colorful suits. It all starts with one spark from Barry Allen. The Marvel and DC universe will quite literally not be the same without him. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you are new. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.